Ladies and gentlemen, today's ceremony will be a covered ceremony. All military present should remain covered, as well as veterans in the audience. The Defense Authorization Act of 2008 and 9, signed by President Bush, amended Section 301(b)(1) of Title 36, which allows all veterans and military personnel who are present today and not in uniform to render a hand salute during the raising and lowering of the national colors or the singing of the national anthem at any time. At this time, I'd like to call up a senior from Hingham High School, Adam Spall, from the Veterans Appreciation Club, to read the proclamation from our governor.
The Commonwealth of Massachusetts, a proclamation. Whereas since the Commonwealth's colonial days, thousands of men and women have served our country in defense of freedom and liberty. And whereas on November 11th, 1918, the armistice was signed in the forest of Compiègne by the Allied nations in Germany, ending World War I, the war to end all wars, after 4 years of conflict. And whereas since that day, every November, people from around the nation have gathered to honor our veterans. And whereas there are approximately 388,000 veterans living in Massachusetts, and whereas today we are reminded of the great sacrifices and contributions our veterans have made to our country, and whereas we honor and salute those who served our country throughout the generations with honor, patriotism, and courage, and whereas it is appropriate that all Massachusetts citizens remember the bravery of those who served their country, so that their dedication and sacrifices serve as a reminder of the cost of our freedom. Now, therefore, I, Charles D. Baker, Governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, do hereby proclaim November 11th, 2017 to be Veterans Day, and urge all the citizens of the Commonwealth to take cognizance of this event and participate fittingly in its observance. Given at the Executive Chamber in Boston, the first day of November in the year 2017, and of the independence of the United States of America, the 241st, by His Excellency, Charles D. Baker, Governor of the Commonwealth, Karen E. Polito, Lieutenant Governor of the Commonwealth, William Francis Galvin, Secretary of the Commonwealth. God save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Bugler, sound assembly!
I ask you all please to rise for the presentation of the colors for our police and fire departments, and also the singing of our national anthem by Hingham High School student athlete Nick Capodalupo.
Detail! Raise it! Ho!
Ready? Hold. Left. Think. Reset. Arm.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we held at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Order! Ho!
Next, I invite forward Hingham Town Clerk Eileen McCracken for the invocation.
Dear Lord, today we honor our veterans, worthy men and women who gave their best when they were called upon to serve and protect their country. We pray that you will bless them for their unselfish service in the continual struggle to preserve our freedoms, our safety, and our country's heritage for all of us. Bless them abundantly for the hardships they faced, for the sacrifices they made, for their many different contributions to America's victories over tyranny and oppression. We respect them, we thank them, we honor them, we are proud of them, and we pray that you will watch over these special people and bless them with peace and happiness. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Please be seated. Today we welcome among all of you, of course, and most especially our veterans from the Board of Selectmen Mary Power, from the Board of Selectmen Paul Healy, our interim town administrator Tom Mayo, Deputy Police Chief David Jones, Deputy Fire Chief Lou LaChance. We gather today, as we rightly do each year, to honor and to thank those who have served our nation and this community by their military service, to thank those who bear the proud title veteran, those who have served in our nation's military forces, as well as those who are serving today and those who will serve tomorrow, play a unique and rightly revered role in the work of our nation. Particularly today, when military service is voluntary, these men and women who have chosen to give of themselves for a greater good and at a personal cost to preserve the precious freedoms that are at the core of what we cherish as Americans. Recalling the words of President Roosevelt to Congress in January of 1941, these freedoms were called out as freedom of speech and expression everywhere in the world. The freedom of every person to worship God in his or her own way everywhere in the world. Freedom from want, which will secure to every nation everywhere a healthy peacetime life for its inhabitants, and freedom from fear, so that no nation anywhere will be in a position to commit an act of physical aggression against any neighbor. These four freedoms, freedom of speech, freedom of worship, freedom from want, freedom from fear. These four freedoms lie at the very core of our existence and indeed our very way of life. It has long been the vigilance and the sacrifice of our veterans that have preserved and defended these precious freedoms. In gathering today, we also express our heartfelt gratitude to the families of our veterans. Family members who have borne the burden of separation from a loved one, the warm presence of a spouse, a parent, a child, and who have borne that burden with courage and a reality shared with the veteran of service and sacrifice. In the early days of our nation's founding, Patrick Henry spoke these memorable words: "The battle, sir, is not to the strong alone. It is to the vigilant, the active, the brave." In assembling today here in Hingham on November the 11th, 2017, we pay special tribute to our veterans, the vigilant, the active, and the brave. Next, I'd invite the Hingham High School Band, under the direction of Brian Sincata, to perform. But before they begin the Armed Forces medley, I'd like to make special note that on a Saturday morning, 32 of your Hingham High School musicians volunteered to be here today and constitute the Hingham High School Band. As the band leads us in the Armed Forces medley, I would ask veterans to please rise as your particular service song is played. I now invite Mary Power, Chairman of the Board of Selectmen, to come forward and make remarks on behalf of the board.
Good morning. Thank you for being here today. As we heard at the beginning, we gather today on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month to honor and remember those who have worn the uniform of the United States of America, both here and abroad, to preserve our freedom and our way of life. Hingham has always had a long-standing tradition of supporting our men and women in uniform. Most recently, our citizens came out in large numbers to welcome home Army Specialist James Ippolito from a recent deployment in Asia. I'm actually the sister of a veteran. My brother Kevin served aboard the USS Nimitz in the Persian Gulf during Operation Desert Storm. He returned home safely, and we're very grateful for that. On Veterans Day, I'm reminded that many of our veterans return with scars, both seen and unseen, and that some do not return. Today, let us particularly honor and remember our Gold Star families. Let us also remember the brave men and women, including many from Hingham, who are serving their country right now as we gather here this morning. 10 years ago, Colby Dunn, a Vietnam veteran, said, "Let us never forget that we cannot rightfully celebrate the joy of our freedom without remembering the great price paid for that freedom. We stagger at the eternal debt we owe to the untold number of American veterans who chose to set aside their personal ambitions and dreams to ensure the well-being of our great nation. May we always be humbly grateful to those brave American patriots who suffered and sacrificed for the freedom of all Americans. We show our gratitude by being here today. And in Hingham, our Veterans Service Office and our Veterans Council show their gratitude in many ways. They check in on families whose loved ones are deployed. They help our veterans transition back from a tour of duty. And they ensure that all of our veterans receive the benefits and services that they have earned through service to our country. All of us here today can show our gratitude too. We can exercise the very freedoms that these men and women laid their lives on the line to protect by voting, by participating in our democracy, by respecting differences of opinion. We can also express our gratitude by following their example of volunteerism and service. As we leave here today, let us recommit ourselves to serving our veterans the way they have served us, and to showing our gratitude to them every day, lest we forget. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Power. We'd expected to have with us today as our principal speaker, Colonel Arthur Ebdahl, and unfortunately he cannot be with us. Colonel Ebdahl suffered a training injury while on duty in Europe only last week, and he is happily recovering but is at home. Now, as luck would have it, we had someone in our bullpen who was ready to step in ably. Our principal speaker was right here in Hingham. To my right, to your left, always at the ready. Let me introduce to you, of course, our Veterans Agent and Veteran Service Officer, United States Navy Seabee Senior Chief Keith German. Let me explain a little bit about Keith that you may or may not know. Construction engineer, Senior Chief Petty Officer Keith German is a lifelong resident here of Hingham, where he lives with his wife of 30 years, Lisa, and their 3 children. His naval career began in 1985, a single day after graduating from Hingham High School. He started at the Naval Training Center in San Diego. He completed his technical training there and was assigned to sea duty as an interior communications electrician. His deployments include combat operations in Africa, Desert Storm in the Persian Gulf aboard the guided missile destroyer USS Kuntz, the amphibious tank landing ship USS Fairfax. He's transited thousands of nautical miles in both the Atlantic and the Indian Oceans. He sailed the waters of the Caribbean, Mediterranean, Red, and Black Seas, all in service of our nation. He left active duty in June of 1991, returned home to Hingham, served an additional 2 years in the reserves at the South Weymouth Naval Air Station, was honorably discharged in 1993, and began his civilian career as a licensed electrician. Shortly after witnessing the horrors of 9/11, Keith was reaffiliated with the United States Naval Reserve and assigned to Naval Mobile Construction Battalion 27 at Hanscom, Westover, and Brunswick. Senior Chief German has held the following battalion positions. He's a squad leader, a platoon commander, detachment officer in charge, and company chief. He's also a member of the elite heavy air detachment, available for rapid deployment within 72 hours' notice. During the global war on terrorism, this unit has been twice pressed into service, once in 2005, again in 2008 for Operation Iraqi Freedom. In 2014, Keith was deployed, as many remember, to the Horn of Africa as an individual augmentee in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. That was intended to quell piracy and insurgency and protect the United States' interests in that region. Chief German's career in the Navy has taken him around the world several times, but Keith remains a true son of Hingham. Today, he's assigned as a safety officer to the 7th Naval Construction Regiment in Gulfport, Mississippi, and is also employed here by the Town of Hingham as a certified Commonwealth of Massachusetts Veterans Service Officer. His notable achievements have earned him many awards, citations, and medals, including the Navy and Marine Corps Commendation and Achievement Medals, Meritorious and Unit Commendations, Battle Efficiency Awards, Good Conduct Medal, Reserve Meritorious Service Medal, and I could go on and on and on, because he has done so much for us. The senior chief's devotion to duty is fed by the Latin motto, Pro Deo et Patria, for God and for country. Keith, please come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, members of the board, military and veterans, families here today. Before I begin my remarks, I too would like to recognize part of the Hingham High School contingent that's here today, members of the Veterans Appreciation Club who served us a lovely breakfast this morning. If I could have them all stand, please. Thank you very much, and thank you for those kind remarks, Mr. Moderator. It was 50 years ago when gratitude, such as that, was in short supply among many segments of the American public. Heroes returned home from Vietnam and were discouraged from wearing their uniforms in public places due to the disrespectful actions of some protesters and others who disagreed with policies that were set by our elected officials at the time. Too often, the protesters failed to realize that it was not the campus agitator who ensured our First Amendment rights. It was that military veteran. That's what veterans do. They put others first. Country first. Mission first. Comrades first. Today is Veterans Day. It is a day that we put veterans first. And putting veterans first also means support and care for their families. It is what President Lincoln famously included when he said about widows and orphans, and I quote, "to care for him who have borne the battle." You don't have to live in a military town to know veterans, and I have lived in many military towns. Veterans are everywhere, sometimes proudly wearing a service cap or military t-shirt, or today, as we found out, now can salute while they're in their civilian clothes to evoke that discussion. Maybe a youngster in the crowd would say, "Daddy, why is that man saluting?" Perhaps they would ask that veteran, and he would tell his story. Other times, quietly blending in the background, many of our veterans, as they do. By virtue of your attendance here today, you likely have an appreciation for our veterans. The people here are veterans, friends of veterans, families of veterans, co-workers of veterans, and neighbors of veterans. It is up to us to ensure that every veteran feels that his or her service to this nation is appreciated by their fellow Americans. There are many tangible ways that we can acknowledge their sacrifice, but the easiest and simplest thing to do is to say thank you. Thank you for what you've done for our country. As a nation, we should commit to serve our veterans as well as they have served us. Unfortunately, 20 veterans a day take their own lives. 20. This is a tragedy for all Americans, since so many of these veterans have never recovered from the invisible wounds of war that they occurred while defending us. If a vet is showing signs of unhappiness or depression, encourage them to seek help through the VA immediately. If they have difficulty obtaining the benefits that they've earned, let them know that thousands of trained service officers nationwide will help them to navigate the bureaucracy free of charge. Here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, there is a VSO in every one of our 351 municipalities. Massachusetts truly leads the way in benefits attainment and delivery. And I am fortunate to have in my office as well to assist me at times when I am away, which seldom happens on duty, my Veterans Benefits Administrator, Lisa Potts. Lisa. Veterans Day is a time to honor not just those who have fought us in battle, but in fact all of the outstanding men and women who served our nation's armed forces since our founding more than 241 years ago today. Peacetime or wartime, all veterans have taken an oath indicating that they were willing to offer their lives in defense of our Constitution and our country. Oftentimes it is the intimidating sight of an Army Ranger team, a Navy destroyer, an Air Force fighter jet, a Marine Corps artillery or Coast Guard cutter that deters the enemy from harming us. Most veterans will agree that the best wars are the ones that are never fought. But when war is necessary, America's fighting men and women always come forward and put their country first. Just 5 years after liberating 2 continents in the Second World War, they again answered the call in Korea, where 35,000 Americans made the ultimate sacrifice so that we all could remain free. Generations later, they served in places like the Persian Gulf, Beirut, Grenada, Panama, Afghanistan, and Iraq. Today, men and women in uniform are providing humanitarian aid, rescuing victims of natural disasters. Some serve in war zones and risk their lives on a daily basis. Some are reservists, some are in the National Guard. And while each takes pride in their branch of service, when an enemy threatens or mission faces, they join together as one family to meet the challenge. That's what veterans do. Country first, mission first, troops always. How else could you describe the motives of someone who undergoes rigorous training, submits themselves to demanding superiors, uproots their lives for minimal pay and long hours? When we hear about our high national debt, we should not minimize it, but we need to remember a higher debt, the one that we owe to those who have given so much to each of us. We need to remember, to them, war is not mere history or a lesson, subject of a book. For them, the battles continue even after the firing stops and they return home, mission complete. We need to remember that veterans' benefits are a cost of war. and a necessary part of fielding a strong national defense. We need to remember the sacrifices made, the lives lost, and the lost family time. We need to remember that Veterans Day is also Freedom's Day. Veterans put us first today, and we shall put veterans first. Thank you for being here today. God bless America, and God bless our veterans.
That's kind of like having Ted Williams pinch hit. The Hingham High School Band will now perform God Bless America. We now move to the awards portion of the program. In keeping with long-standing tradition, I invite last year's recipient of the Veteran of the Year Award, John Asher, to come forward and present this year's award. Mr. Asher.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. It's a real privilege for me this morning to be here to effect basically a change of command ceremony, if you will, in introducing to you Hingham's newly chosen Veteran of the Year for 2018. The individual whom I will shortly name was selected from amongst several excellent nominees by an impartial panel of 5 town citizens, chaired by our town clerk, Eileen McCracken, and including our former town moderator of 40 years, himself a previous Veteran of the Year, Tom O'Donnell. The panel's evaluation process was thorough and fair, and the individual we selected unquestionably has compiled a decades-long record of community volunteerism of significant value and civic leadership. His multiple nominations and many endorsements by numerous other Hingham civic leaders and fellow veterans speak emphatically to his strong character and the respect in which he is held by all who know him. It's my great pleasure to introduce this heretofore unsung hero to you this morning, an individual whose volunteer service I have personally witnessed for many years. His record of military service dates back to 1945, when, as a 15-year-old, he enlisted in the New York State Guard Infantry. After the start of the Korean War, he enlisted in the regular army and was deployed to Korea as a field radio repairman with the 25th Infantry Division. In recognition of that division's combat effectiveness, he was awarded a Presidential Unit Citation. Among other decorations, our Veteran of the Year received the Korean Service Medal with 3 campaigns, the United Nations Korean Medal, and the Korean Ambassador for Peace Medal. I've seen black and white photos of this individual's canvas living quarters on hilltops in Korea, and I can affirm that they were Spartan at best in an unforgiving climate. In total, this individual served 10 years with the Army Guard, the Army Reserves, and on active duty. He has also been a member of the U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary for the past 22 years, supporting the Boston Lighthouse, among other assignments, and has won a Sustained Service Award for compiling over 3,000 hours of support. His long record of service to Hingham is equally impressive. He and his wife moved to Hingham in 1976. 6 years later, he joined the Veterans of Foreign Wars Post and has since provided continuous support to Hingham's veterans, citizens, and school children for the past 35 years. 3 aspects of his sustained record of service deserve special mention. First, his rescue and rejuvenation of the town's VFW post that had been on the verge of folding before he became the post commander. There's a reason he's nicknamed Mr. Post. Second, his introduction and ongoing local management of the VFW's Patriots Pen and Voice of Democracy National Essay Contest. During the past 7 years, over 400 high school students have competed locally for this prestigious yearly recognition. Finally, this individual has been a regular and enthusiastic presenter at the annual High School Sophomore History Field Day held at GAR Memorial Hall each spring. There's no doubt that the hundreds of students who have heard his presentation over the years have learned important life lessons from him, in addition to hearing about his Korean War military service. It's always fun watching him recruit a student from the audience to help him into his now 65-year-old U.S. Army Eisenhower field jacket, which still fits. You've probably seen this individual consistently winning his age group in the July 4th road race, serving in color guards and rifle squads at the town's various military observances, and now it's my true honor to ask Mr. Herm Mesmer.
We're going to read the citation. When he comes up, you should read this.
Thank you very much. We had a job. You did. Very good.
Go ahead.
The security around that announcement has been incredible, but I just want to read a certificate of appreciation. The Town of Hingham and the Hingham Veterans Council would like to extend its heartfelt thanks and appreciation for your participation in our annual Veterans Day observance. Each Veterans Day should be a time when Americans stop and remember the brave men and women who have risked their lives for the United States of America. As President Dwight Eisenhower said, "It is well for us to pause, to acknowledge our debt to those who paid so large a share of freedom's price. As we stand here in grateful remembrance of the veterans' contributions, we renew our conviction of individual responsibility to live in ways that support the eternal truths upon which our nation is founded and from which flows all its strength and all its greatness." To Herman Mesmer, Jr., thank you from an appreciative town and Veterans Council. From the Town of Hingham, Veterans Day, Friday, November 11th, 2017.
First of all, I'd like to thank everybody for coming today. I'd like to thank the Veterans Council for its selection and all the work they put into it. And I'd like to thank the Town of Hingham, the people, and people who work here and all the good times I've had since I retired in this place. And especially I want to thank, some individuals, and I don't like to start naming names because I'll leave somebody out, but there are people who put that history together that you heard today that I'm indebted to. And there's people who have set examples for me as a veteran in all the services we provide. The Marine Corps provides the discipline that we need, and I'm not in the Marines, but I've had relatives there. And it's the best thing that happened to me is when I got into the VFW and started to meet and work with these guys and gals, and we have really done a lot. We've had a good time, and I've heard all their stories and what they've gone through as a veteran, and we can't ever forget that, what the veterans are doing. I don't have any more to say other than to thank everybody, and remember the Marine Corps saying of spirit of discipline, because that's what keeps us going. And I'm proud to say that I'm remembering that. So thank you very much, and have a great Veterans Day.
Just stay up here, move over a little bit, right there. Ladies and gentlemen, our Senator from Norfolk and Plymouth County, Patrick O'Connor, could not be here today as he is speaking at Weymouth, but has passed along this from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts State Senate official citation. Be it known that the Massachusetts Senate hereby extends its congratulations to Herman Mesmer Jr. in recognition of your dedicated service to the country and being named the Town of Hingham's 2017 Veteran of the Year. And be it further known that the Massachusetts Senate extends its best wishes for continued success, that this citation be duly signed by the President of the Senate and attested to, and a copy thereof transmitted to the clerk. Signed, Patrick O'Connor.
Thank you so much.
I think you got to stay here. Come this way. Come this way.
Invite forward our Representative Joan Moschino.
Do you have the citation? I do. Oh, good morning. Apologies for being late. I started my day in my hometown of Hull, but I am delighted to be here to celebrate Veterans Day with you and to take this moment to honor our Veteran of the Year. Don't have the citation with me, but we will extend that to you separately. But please just allow me to let you know that we did have a citation printed, and it was read into the record, and the entire House of Representatives extends its good wishes for your
Thank you so much.
service and for your continued good fortune.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everyone.
I'd invite Keith to come forward to give our next award, the Law Enforcement Award.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Our next award, as you mentioned, is the Law Enforcement Award. Now, we'll read a little bit of background for you. So you may want to keep your hankies at the ready. During the last 15 months, I had the unique opportunity of witnessing an act of such deep compassion towards a well-known World War II veteran and this law enforcement officer that I quickly brought it to the attention of the Chief of Police, his deputy, and the town administrator. You see, this veteran, Guy stated, was in the midst of a perfect storm, so to speak. His beloved wife, Pauline, of 73 years, had been remanded to a long-term care facility, no longer by his side in their Kimball Beach home, where they had raised 3 children after the war. She visited him daily, returning home. He visited her daily in the nursing home, returning each night to care for his dog, Bibby, and their bird. Realizing this was a lot of work, Guy asked for my help, at which time I introduced him to our town's animal control officer, Leslie Badger. He asked if she could take on the bird until his wife was well enough to return. Unfortunately, this was not to be. Both Pauline and, coincidentally, the bird died on Valentine's Day 2016. Now Guy and Bibby were truly alone. And as mentioned, the storm raged on. Bibby now became ill, and it was determined he must be euthanized. And with Leslie's guidance and continued support, the family painstakingly complied, and now Guy was, again, truly alone. Sensing that she could do more for this family, Leslie began to make her weekly visits to the home during her off-duty hours with her own animal, a rat terrier named Lexi. A deep and lasting friendship developed and quickly grew between these three, as Leslie would often be seen bringing over now a pizza or a sandwich or stopping by to allow her dog the opportunity to comfort this now 95-year-old veteran. The trio was unbreakable until Guy himself perished in May of this year. Our public servants take an oath to protect and serve, but this transcended that oath. This young woman went above and beyond the call of duty. She was instrumental in helping this veteran live out his final year by filling the void due to his wife's passing and then his own animals. It's individuals such as this that make Hingham the fine community that it is. Leslie, I am proud to know you, and we, the veterans of this town, thank you for your service. The law enforcement certificate accommodation reads, presented to Animal Control Officer Leslie Badger of the Hingham Police Department. This commendation is awarded for outstanding public service benefiting our community, state, and nation. Presented by the Hingham Veterans Council, Department of Veterans Services, this 11th day of November 2017. Signed by the Director of Veterans Services and the Hingham Veterans Council. Good job.
Please be seated. The next award is given in accordance with the Massachusetts World War I Centennial Commission, which urges honoring the memories of those who served and died in the Great War. It is therefore my honor at this time to call to the stage Eagle Scout Chris Sullivan of the Old Colony Council Troop Number 4. Chris. Chris will explain his Eagle Scout project and present it formally to the Board of Selectmen. Mr. Sullivan.
Thank you. My Eagle project started because I wanted to do something for our veterans. Senior Chief German had an old shoebox filled with World War I victory medals of Hingham residents. We thought it would be appropriate to display these forgotten medals in honor of the soldiers who served in the Great War. My project involved researching the genealogy of the veterans. It was an honor to work on this project, and it couldn't have been done without the extraordinary efforts of Mrs. Barbara Valenti, Mrs. Lorraine Roberts, my fellow scouts, my parents, and Senior Chief German. Most descendants were not able to be contacted. However, the nephew of one of the recipients, Urban Cronin, is here today. I invite the Cronin family to stand up. I now present this display to the Board of Selectmen.
ahead.
Allow me now to read a certificate of appreciation awarded to Christopher Brian Sullivan, Old Colony Council, Boy Scouts of America, Troop 4. In recognition of the valuable contributions that you have made to honor the memory of those Hingham citizens who served and died in the Great War, in grateful appreciation for your dedication and research, in remembering these veterans of Hingham, your presentation will make a lasting impact on our town and on our town's history. This citation was signed by Mary Power, Paul Healy, and Karen Johnson, constituting the Board of Selectmen, Town of Hingham. And now I'd invite you please to stand as our town clerk, Eileen McCracken, gives the benediction. I'd invite you also please to remain standing while the marching units adjourn to the Veterans Monument outside of Town Hall, where ultimately we will conclude today's ceremonies. Mrs. McCracken.
God, please let every veteran of our nation's armed forces feel truly and appropriately honored by the attention and appreciation of their fellow citizens. Let no one feel forgotten or neglected. Let every man and woman, young or old, feel the deep and enduring gratitude of our nation and its inhabitants. Amen.
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 Detail, obtain, hoot, parade, colors. Bugler, sound retreat. Raise it, hoot. Order, arms, detail, fall out to the monument.
This concludes the indoor portion of the ceremony. Please join all of us right outside Town Hall at the Veterans Monument.
Bugler, sound to the colors. Raise it, hoot. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Order! Halt! Present! Ho!
Rifle detail. Look, fire left. Present, fire left. Forward, arm. Half right. Look, fire left. Straight. Ready. Aim. Fire. Take aim. Fire. Push, fire left. Aim. Fire. Recover. Half left. Present. Arm. Present. Fire left.